Your trainer is Hannington Ondiek. I hold a position of Power BI analyst at an organization called Geopol. In the current world, at some point back, they used to say data is the new oil. I don't know if the say still holds, but whatever drives lots of businesses and business decision making is data, which has to be insightful. Otherwise, data that has not been drilled down and, for lack of a better word, purified, may not necessarily help a business make decisions. So in this session today, what are we going to learn? There are 6 key areas we're going to focus on. Or at the end of this presentation, we should be able to, 1, be able to describe the business value and features of Power BI. 2, you should be able to know the components of Power BI and be able to distinguish between them. 3, we're going to go through the process of getting your data, loading it into Power BI, and doing basic transformations. Then we proceed to create a basic dashboard, and then look at Power BI from a consumer perspective. The consumer is the user of the ready-made reports and dashboards. And then we will see we will look into a few AI functionalities that we can use within Power BI to get insights. So we start with knowing what Microsoft Power BI is. And Microsoft Power BI is a collection of software as a service. So it is comprised of various apps and connectors that let you link to various data sources. So with the Power BI, you can get data from multiple sources. We can have Excel as a data source. We can have server that could be SQL server. We could have MySQL server. We could have business platforms such as CRM and enterprise reporting platforms. All those are data sources. Power BI has a variety of connectors to help you get all that data into one place. So apart from Power BI just being a combination of software, it serves a very important role in analytics by helping us build reporting solutions. And then through integration of those data, we can be able to create reports, prepare our data, visualize them, distribute them through sharing within our organizations and outside organizations, and also be able to do several managements. When we talk of managing these reports and dashboards, we are talking about, let's say, security features. Who needs to access what from the data? We can do all that kind of limiting using Power BI. We've said the Power BI is comprised of a number of elements. So a complete set of Power BI is made up of 1, we have a desktop application. The desktop bit of it is actually free. So do not worry about questioning how you'll get started with the Power BI, because the desktop part of it is free. You can just get into Google, just search, download Power BI, and you'll be able to get the desktop bit of it. Two, we have an online bit of it that serves as a software as a service, subscription based. That means you need to pay for it. But for a starter, you can be able to get a free trial for 60 days. So you just need to register with a work or a school email. Then we have Power BI apps. So all these three link together to be able to provide you an entire suite of Power BI. We get into Power BI workflow. So this is not necessarily meant that the process of working in Power BI is as linear as presented in this, but there are fundamental steps that you take from the point of having your data until the end of the cycle where you have processed your data and you are sharing it with the colleagues and anyone who could be the end user of the data. So a first step that you start with is in the Power BI desktop. I did say this is not such a very linear process, but at some instances you could start building your reports even in the Power BI service side of it. But the Power BI side, the Power BI service has some limitations when it comes to full functionalities of transforming your data. That is why it is recommended or it said that you start your data analysis or data preparation service from the desktop side of it. So when you start, it means you are starting from getting your data. Where does your data reside? Is it a CSV file? Is it an Excel file? Does it reside in a database? So we start from the desktop side of it to get data, which, as we said, Power BI has so many data connectors. And I think I would just start by probably demonstrating what now this Power BI desktop looks like, so that we are not so lost. So we start with a blank report. If you click on blank report, that is the window that shows up. Now, from that window, when we come here, at the home tab, there is this tab that tells us to get data. So we did say that there are so many data connectors in Power BI. I think currently they could be going to a region of around 300. So if you look at this, there's a list of connectors that you can use to pull your data, and there is more. If you click on to more, then all of this are connectors that we can use to pull data. For a start, and normally the basic starting point of it is data is normally in Excel. So if your data is saved in Excel, you'll pick Excel. At times there is also data saved in Excel, but with an extension of CSV, you can pick CSV. So if we pick Excel, then you proceed to connect. Now you need to find the folder from which the data is placed or stored. For our case, it's stored in it's in desktop. Some folder there. Let me just get it. but it's just a basic process of you trying to get your data from the location in which it is saved. Yes, so this is our data. Select and then open. So it's loading and it's provided as a table there. If you check that, you get a preview of what your data looks like. So yes, that is one of the steps we mentioned of getting data. So from the point of getting data, then the second step needs to be you transform that data. Transforming that data means you are going to shape your data into the columns or fields that would be necessary for your analysis. Transforming means you're looking into your data to see if you have the correct data types. You do just the cleaning process of your data so that whatever output of the transformation process you have makes your data now ready for visualization and reporting. So from the stage of transforming your data, we get back into data visualization, where we create reports in the Power BI desktop and proceed to publish that report into Power BI service. And when we get to Power BI service, now it is where we distribute the report, the dashboard, and interact with it. That is at the consumer end of it. So the first three steps, that is that getting the data, transforming and creating visualization, happens in the desktop side. And then you publish from the desktop. Now you push that report into Power BI service, and then you interact with it on the online platform. So basically, let's say the first three steps: get data, transform, visualize, happens in the desktop side, and then the interaction with the report happens on the service side. Before we see an end-to-end process of pulling data and creating reports to that interaction, we still need to understand some basic things, and this is now we are into what we call the building blocks of Power BI or Power BI elements. So we think that building blocks of Power BI is made up of three components or elements. That is the semantic model, which is basically referred to as the data model. Then we have reports and the dashboards. So a semantic model at the surface level of it is just a collection of the data that you import into Power BI and connect to. So this model would contain the data, the transformation process, the relationships, and the probable calculations that you carry out on your data. We will see into those calculations and what we mean by relationship. Then, apart from the semantic model, which is now our data model, we have visuals, and the visuals are made up of reports and dashboards. So a Power BI report could be one or more pages that is composed of data visualizations. And then, as we said in the workflow of Power BI, that you create a report, publish online, then you will do the management and distribution. So from reports, in this case, you publish reports online, and then from reports, you can create dashboards. So ideally, we are saying that in most instances, the output or whatever comes out of Power BI desktop is a report and not necessarily a dashboard. We will see into the differences between a dashboard and a report. But now we are saying a dashboard, and you need to note this, a dashboard is and will always be a single page canvas that contains various visuals. If you realize you are looking into a Power BI product, an analytical output, and it is 2 or more pages, and in most contexts, people use reports and the dashboards interchangeably, but that is not always the case. So, apart from the Power BI elements, there is what we call views. Views just mean what we can see from this point. Okay, I can just cancel this and we will do an entire process of loading the data and analyzing. So what we are talking of Power BI views are just these three. If I hover over this, you see this is a report view. A report view, this is where you are going to create your visuals. On this right, we have lots of options for charts and visuals to choose from depending on your analysis. So this is what we call the report view. If I click on this is a data view. It will show you the data that we've put in. And from this view, this is where you can further do other data manipulations and calculations in order to just create additional columns or measures that you need to have a refined analysis of your data. And then we have the model view. Now, model view just gives you a graphical view of the relationship between the several tables that you might have in your dataset. So, to help us see how those views now look well, we'll now pull our data in, which will say you get data depending on the data source. But for now, because it's an introductory phase, we are not going to look into different data sources or connectors. We'll just use Excel. So I'm loading the data as the first stage of the Power BI workflow, or any analytical process just starts with pulling in data. Now, down here, we have the option to load data. If you click load data, it will come directly into the report view that we have seen. But that should happen if you are so sure that your data is clean and you don't want to take it through any further processing. So the most recommended practice is that you select the transform data. If you select transform data, it opens up a totally different new window. Some of you who have interacted with Excel to some intermediate level have been able to see this. Now this is called the Power Query window. It is the Power Query editor. It is in this editor where we now do lots of data transformation. The second step of the process that we talked about, the transformation and modeling bit of it. So here, you are able to get an overview of your data. So by default, Power BI is set to just give you the first 1,000 rows of your data. But it does not mean that that is the entire size of your data. It's just giving you an overview of it. But the moment you load it, it will just bring the entire data set into Power BI. So from the Power Query, we can look into a number of things. One is just scroll through to look at how do your columns look. So are your column names appearing well as you expected, or there is something that is out of context? But before we do much into looking at how the data looks, I would like us to just get a basic overview of Power Query editor. We think on the left, this is written cells. Now, that is where you'll have a list of all the tables that you bring in. In this context, they are referred to as queries. So when I talk of a query, I'm simply talking of a data table. Those who are used to SQL and all that, kindly do not confuse this. In this context, queries are just tables. So that is where the name of the table that you brought in or the data is. So if you feel that the name that appears here or how your table is named is not right, you can rename it. If you right click, there is an option to rename it. That is one way of renaming that query. On the right, there is this section called properties. You can as well do the renaming here. For example, I can say, let's rename it as sales table. So you see on the left, it's renamed. Then at the central bit of it, this is where you now view your data. And then on the right, we have what is called applied steps. So this is a series of steps that have happened, or implementation steps that you have undergone in order to bring your data up to the current view. You see the first step is source. That is where Power BI was referencing my computer to get the folder in which the data was stored. Then we go to navigation. So in advance, we may be able to look into all this. These are just steps that Power BI does for you. In this context, you're just pointing and clicking, but otherwise there is a code that runs behind to create those steps. Only that now we said Power BI is taking the intimidation away from you. It is doing the coding itself. So this code that runs behind Power BI in the editor, now the Power Query editor, is called M language. Just as there could be R, there could be Python and all that. So our work is to point and click. Could sound easy, and it generates. So at this point, these are just steps that Power BI did automatically for me. I have not done anything up to this point. Then it did up to this point. It means like change type, Power BI just looked into the columns of data that I have and automatically detects the data types. Like the order ID, it is detected, and now it indicates now this data type is numerical. So you can always see the data type by hovering over this. 1, 2, 3, that is numerical. We had one here, ABC, that is text. But if you feel there is a data type that you need to change, you can just right click on that column and then come to change type. You choose the right type that you want. That is one way of changing it. You can also do the drop down, but the drop down is not really to change, but to do an overview of what your values look like. Assume we have categorical data. Let's see, there was Let's look into color. Initially, assuming we expected to have 3 values for color. So, yes, but at times there could be more values. It's telling list may be incomplete, so you load more. Yes, there could be null. Now, if we expected 3 color and managed to find another color there that is yellow, it means something is an issue with our data, and then we needed to do away with that value. So those are just part of pre-processes that we need to do to get our data ready. For most instances, this data is just clean. There is nothing much to it. What we can do is, let's see, if we have a customer country and you see it is appearing in lowercase, just not some quite ordered manner, we can decide to do a cleanup of this, and we can choose to make it an uppercase, or just see Rwanda is in small r and we need to make it capital R and all that. If we have such cases, then if you select that column, you right click on it, then you go to transform. What transformation do we need? We can make it uppercase or just capitalize each color, each word. If you select that, with that single select, we now have that. It has done that cleaning, and that column is now okay. So the process that we have done is already saved here, which you can do away with. If you feel you did something that is not right there, you can cancel this, but then the previous steps will still remain the same. So that makes our work a little bit easier. These steps can as well be rearranged depending on an order of processing that you needed to be done. So let me just repeat the process we did and then get back to something. So our data is on the bike models and all that. We have ID. So what kind of analysis may we want from here? A basic one could be, we have an item cost here and an item price. So basic business says we can look into profitability of that. So to do a basic analysis on that, how do we calculate profit? Someone could just type in. Yeah, we proceed, and profits are just the cost of goods minus the selling price, the cost at which you are buying the good, and then what selling price you're doing. So that means we can get the difference between this column and this column, just as in Excel. So this means we need to create an additional column. If you are to add another column, you come to the tab add column and then custom column. Because we are going to have to do a formula, you check the custom column. Now we give it a name, profits, and then we have the item cost and the item price. So it is item price. Here we already even have the list of columns. You can type in directly or just choose insert minus another column, item cost. Give it an OK. Here, if your formula has a problem, you'll get an error here. But if there is no syntax error, you get the green check mark, and that is a green light that you're okay to go. So these are profits. But as I said, we can do the cleaning of a format. If you see this appearing ABC 123, it means this is any data type which may not be accurate for any kind of calculation. So you change this data type, change type, and then we make it decimal. We could choose decimal or just a whole number. And then now that is our profit. Not to take much time, we could as well have done another kind of analysis and say maybe we have order date and delivery date. If we need to get the time to deliver, how many days does it take or in hours, then you get that difference. But some of those we'll do in intermediate class. So once you feel your data is ready for your visualization, then you get to the home page, home tab, then click close and apply. Now Power BI is loading the data. It is closing the Power Editor query and now bring it into the report view that we talked about. Here is our data. It's showing here with all the columns that was in the data. We could have as well dropped some columns that are not necessary. So just to recap on what we said about the views. Now this is the report view. We have the data and we said you could create. If you just select into a visual that you need, Power BI loads it. And then you need to put in the data points that you need. So for example, if we have just so what values do we want to show with what details? So let's assume we had something like a bike color, product color. Then what values? If you bring this to values, Power BI automatically detects that this needs to be a count. So you see, it counts all the products with a particular color and groups them, and that is what now gives you this visual. So this is now the report view that we talked about. Then the data view, it's here. It's now showing us all the data that we have. And then it can allow us to, from this data, create a new table or do a new column, or in a little bit of advanced analysis, do a measure, which we will talk about in a different class. And then there is the relation, the model view of the relationship. Here we just have one table, so there is no relationship. But if we could have several tables, then we link those different tables with each other using a common column, which for those who understand joining data sets, we use primary keys. So those are the views that we talked about. So at this point, we have already loaded the data, done the transformation, and now we are in that phase of creating visualization. So this was just a random one. We are looking into the product color segmentation, and already we can see that the red color, that is the product with the red color, is dominant in terms of the quantities that are being ordered there. Then we could as well do, we could randomly do profitability analysis by region. We already did calculate the profits, but now we want to look it by, let's say, country. So this is a bar chart, and we are using it to analyze categorical data. So on the x-axis, That is on the y-axis. We are going to have country, and then let's look at the profitability. Yes. So for this business, we're seeing that Kenya is a highly profitable country, and yes, Rwanda being down there, it could be in terms because of customer base or a number of things. But for this case, we are just doing a basic visualization so that we are able to understand how fast it is for this tool to help us get quick insights out of our data. Then, apart from that, we could decide to do a filter for our data, and probably let's try looking into the model of the bike. So this, I'm creating a slicer that we can use to slice down our data. So if we have, these are the models of our bicycles, then we can look into one of them. Let's say the road. If we select this, look at what happens to your visuals. Now, Power BI has narrowed down to look into the road model and sliced it down, the two analysis that we did in terms of the product color and the country profitability. So you can see that interactivity that is being brought about by the Power BI. Speaking of interactivity, we can as well look into Somali. Just select one and look at what happens into the other chart. So that is the level of or basic analysis that we can look into and further. So the whole essence is to show you how fast this tool enable you to process your data and dig deep through various interactions. There is also one thing we just need to look into before I get into the next space is if we have this chart and right click, we see the option telling us analyze. But this feature will vary with the visuals. For some visuals, it will not show up. So if you select analyze, you see Power BI has done some of its own processing and resulted with that. And it's giving a statement that mountain bikes 100 with 17 of that percent, and all that has the most distribution. So I'm just showing this feature. Don't be concentrated so much on the analysis or the output of this, but it's just showing you that Power BI has AI built-in features that you can use to first get your insights. So, assuming we've made our dashboard ready, we have created visuals, then the next step that we said is to publish. So you save your report and proceed to publish. So if we publish, I had not saved the name, so we'll just do a name, save. And then once that is saved, but as I said, this needs you to now have an account. Then we will choose a workspace. Workspace is just a container where you're going to hold together your reports or elements in the Power BI service of it. So there could be my workspace or another workspace that exists. If you publish to my workspace, it means only you and no any other person in the organization is able to see what is there. So you cannot even share those reports. So it's advisable to share into a workspace that is shared by an entire organization. So I'm publishing. I see we are running out of time. It's telling me now the publication is successful, and already I'm having a link here. You can just select this directly. And it's now loading on our Power BI service. Yes, so we are on to Power BI service, and our report is now online. So once we are online, what can we do? We can do building of a basic dashboard. And as we said, the process of building a dashboard is just almost constant. You need to prepare your data. We already did that. We did build a report. Now, from a report, you just need to pin the visuals into a dashboard and share that link. So what we have here is a report. But if we need to, if we need to build a dashboard, then we come here. If you hover over this visual, there is this pin. It now tells you to pin the visual. Pin to a dashboard. There is existing dashboard and a new one. Because we don't have an existing one, we create a new one. And then pin. So you can pin one visual after the other until you're okay with it. Now we have an existing dashboard, we just pin to that. Or at times you could just choose the entire report and pin to a dashboard. That also works. Now, once we have done that, we have done the pinning, we can check into our workspace and see here we have a sales dashboard. If you open this, you're able to see now this is a dashboard that you can interact with. There is the functionality for you to edit. You can subscribe to a dashboard. That is, if you subscribe, you'll be able to get email notification on the changes and updates that happen there. Or we can do what we said. The final step is share your dashboard. So if you share, you're going to put an email of the people you want to receive that dashboard, and then they'll receive a notification. You can as well pick this link and send it directly, either through Teams, emails, or whatever channel, to anyone who should be using or reviewing that data. You need to distinguish between reports and dashboards. So they're all used to visualize data and allow you get insights. But a key difference is that dashboards are meant to provide an overview or highlight of the data. So in-depth, if you want in-depth understanding of what that data reveals to you, that you can receive from a report. So it means that reports are more detailed and more complex compared to dashboards. So in terms of user cases, dashboards are majorly used by executives or top-level management who just want an overview of how things are running in terms of key performance indicators in an organization and high-level metrics. But when you now need to dig down deep, now that comes into your reports. Yeah, so that is just an overview. There is also the question of, are you a Power BI consumer? So when you come to the online side of it, if you are a person who is using already built-in reports on the Power BI service, then you are a Power BI consumer. The Power BI developer is normally working on the desktop side to create reports and build tools from that other side. What things can we do with the Power BI online. This is our dashboard. So one thing we said is you can subscribe and get notifications into that. We can also, if you want to export this, you can hover over your visuals. You can share one, or you can even export a data that makes up a visual so that you are able to further use it on the Excel side. This same report can as well be exported. A whole report can be exported as PowerPoint or PDF that you can use to share around. Power BI also allow you to collaborate with your teammates. So we can even, there is, okay, this is the dashboard side of it. But if you go to the report, you can always be able to create a comment and share it with your team as you collaborate on a particular project. So because of time, I think I'll rest my case there and allow a few questions.